when we hear, we either accept or reject, or we translate what we hear according to our knowledge, our background, or we compare what is being said to what is already known. Or we oppose one idea by another. All these characteristics of hearing denies the act of listening. When one listens, there is no comparison, there is no acceptance or rejection. And that act of listening puts away anything that is not true. You listen to the totality of the thing. When you attend, there is no borders of inattention.
I want you to listen.
Then what?
Share it.
With?
Whoever you share with. Whoever you know, the people you're close to. Tonight's talk is consciousness, creativity, and the brain. And if you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-sized understanding. When you look out, a golf ball-sized awareness. And when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball-sized wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness. And when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter.
And when you go into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return, because this ensures that you are dead on the waters. You see, this is a ship in the sea of... Oh, it's in the sea of air, in the sea of water. That is why it is a citizen ship, whereas this is the living document. And when you go into court or anywhere like that, and you bring that into you, that notifies those dead entities that you are living, that you are a man or a woman, not a person. This is a person, this is a man. And so I am not a person, I am a man, a flesh, blood man. This person can go to jail. This person, they can have this person on your birth certificate, which is a death certificate, but your live born record tells you that you are living. Please acquire your live birth record, folks. Please go to the registry and have this with you at all times, and get out of the jurisdiction of the police and the judges, for they are committing fraud against your name, against your living being status, and they are reducing you to a person. A person is a corporation. You don't want to be a corporation. A corporation is a corpse. It's dead. It does not live, it does not speak. They can't hear your voice in court. It's a commercial process. They can only deal with the dead in their ship of citizenships. And you don't want to be a citizen. You want to be a sovereign under God's jurisdiction, and take yourself out of their ship, their citizenship, because this is a ship. of Admiralty Law. And when you go into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return.
On this edition of the Fifth Estate,
We have a warning for you tonight.
it was General Motors' deadly secret.
What happened to this GM car? Crappy little Cobalt.
Now a startling look inside the GM culture that put a price on their customers' lives.
GM made a business decision not to fix these safety defects.
The dead Canadians who might have been saved.
He died for a 57-cent piece that should have been fixed over 10 years ago.
And the life or death question, what's Transport Canada doing to protect you? It's incumbent upon the manufacturer to let Transport Canada know about a defect in a timely fashion.
That's right.
Is it almost a decade and a half in timely fashion? I'm Bob McEwen. This is the Fifth Estate. Ahead, the story of the switch from hell. Safety defects. GM didn't. The company somehow rationalized that a loss of power, even at high speed, wasn't really a safety issue, but more of a customer convenience issue. And there was no recall. Instead, what General Motors did was send this service bulletin to its dealers in Canada and the US, telling them the Cobalt ignition could be rotated out of position by an especially heavy key ring, but no warning about the deadly possibilities if it was. An indication that General Motors was about to secretly replace that tiny but defective ignition part, the detent plunger, and no recall. According to auto industry critic Clarence Ditlow, GM has long been keenly aware of the cost of recalling and repairing its vehicles.
They certainly do a cost analysis. They've done cost-benefit analysis of what it would cost to save a life.
A case in point, the memo from a GM engineer in the 70s that was infamous for its callous calculation of the cost per car, at which it no longer made financial sense for General Motors to try to save a life with a part change or recall. How much was too much? Incredibly, that prohibitive amount was just $2.40 per vehicle. So it's worth it to pay the damages of the lawsuit when somebody dies in a fire because of a faulty part?
That's right.
Rather than
or not pay or not pay anything?
It's cheaper to
my ass pay anything
the lawsuit than it is to put the safety into the vehicle.
Shares of General Motors fell sharply today after the brokerage firm Goldman Sachs urged investors to sell the stock.
And as the world economy began its downward spiral in 2007 and 8, financial considerations apparently were far more pressing than fixing those troublesome ignition switches.
The idea of having to recall, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of cars to make a repair was going to cost the company money at a time when it didn't have money.
Marianne Keller is a longtime auto industry analyst who's written 2 books about General Motors and its culture.
You don't speak up in meetings. You don't talk about the problem. If you do talk about the problem and become very aggressive about it, you're branded a disgruntled employee and your career ends. Simple.
Hey guys, you are looking at GM CEO Dan Anderson. He has just driven the first bolt up onto the stage here.
After all the attention to bankruptcy and bailouts, GM was intent on shifting the spotlight, here announcing a new electric car. But it still couldn't escape its past. April 2013, Detroit, Michigan, a meeting room at the Westin Hotel. Lawyer Lance Cooper, representing Brooke Melton's family in their suit against General Motors, started taking depositions. On the hot seat, the GM engineer who'd supervised development of the Cobalt ignition switch.
Yeah, right.
Ray
Who
DeGiorgio.
gets to the hot seat?
Remember, he called it the switch from hell.
Primarily, I was the project engineer for the ignition switch in that vehicle.
You'll also recall Lance Cooper's team had discovered that GM secretly replaced the defective part. But asked whether he'd approved the change, Engineer DeGiorgio denied any knowledge of it whatsoever.
We certainly did not approve a detent plunger design change.
I asked him as many different ways as I could, whether he knew of a change, whether GM knew of a change. He said, I don't know, GM doesn't know. He said, I've spoken with the supplier, they don't know of any change. There was no change ever made. And then we presented him with a photograph showing the change, and his position was, I don't know anything about this.
Did you ever authorize Delphi?
Ray DiGiorgio was then asked by the General Motors lawyer if he had approved that new ignition switch. Again, he denied it all.
Absolutely not.
So if any such change was made, it was made without your knowledge and authorization.
That is correct.
But after DiGiorgio made those claims, he knew nothing. This document surfaced, a letter from GM to the supplier called Delphi that made the controversial ignition switches. It was dated 2006, but only came to light 8 years later, after
We go through some news you can trust. Can we look at specifics? Because sometimes, tell me what you want to know. I think sometimes you can make generalities, right? And they're not that you can get away with a lot. Well, I think let's talk about specifics. That in itself was a generality. Let's look at this one. Or in the book, you say in the book, let's kill General Motors. Let's take it back from its shareholders. Scribble out the name and the logo, and let's use its resources for something more valuable.
Now, Evan, I hope you're not going to use this opportunity for you, an Oxford-educated economist, to come on the TV and be rude to me.
I'm not being rude. I want
an autodidact, a self-educated man, for simply trying to suggest that there might be an alternative to corporate hegemony, that there might be an alternative to our governments bending over for the benefit of big corporations.
I want to raise this
that's what ordinary people care about, mate. It's affecting ordinary people's lives. I don't know if it's affecting the places you hang out and where you drink.
Let me speak.
Tell me what you need to know.
Yeah, there may be. I mean, you're very good in this book.
Thanks.
And you're going to get a lot of praise for the way you
I
document.
don't want praise. I want change.
You're going to get a lot of praise
change. Great.
for identifying a lot that people don't like about society at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to spot things that are wrong with society at the moment, right?
Absolutely.
We have the bejeweled bus you talk about. 85 people in the world who have as much as 55 billion.
What's your point, Evan? What's your point,
point is,
come on,
you
sharpen up, you're in big shoes.
You propose another system, and it might be that your system is better.
Yes.
Or it might be that you haven't had the imagination to think about the problems that the other system has. So I'm trying to get into a detail here, which you want to take.
Imagination. That's your accusation. What's the problem with my imagination?
I want to take an example of something you
say.
Take
the example.
Take General Motors from its shareholders.
Absolutely.
Do you know who owns it? The United Auto Workers Union owns a chunk of it. The Canadian government owns a chunk of it. You take it from them, and then
Evan, are you seriously telling me that the corporate world, companies like Monsanto and Pfizer, are operating on behalf of us, ordinary people? Is that your argument? Are you coming on Newsnight, a great British institution, to say that corporations like Vodafone, Amazon,
sometimes
Google, who don't pay their tax in this country, who are aided and assisted by our government, while people fill the squares arrested for possessing tarpaulin so they can peacefully protest, you want to say that corporates are getting a rough ride?
I don't say they're getting a rough ride.
Look, you've got a proper job.
I want to ask you...
But why don't you answer some questions?
I want to ask what you propose that people who own General Motors should do when you have taken...
I don't want to follow you down blind alleys about silly administrative quibbles. Let me be absolutely clear. I don't trust politicians. No one does. I don't trust the corporations in this country that you inadvertently work for every time you take this line with me. What I'm saying is that people can run their own workplaces, people can run their own communities. The people of this country have been patronised enough, mate, and let's not do it in this interview.
I'm not patronising anybody.
Good.
You say you want General Motors to stop making cars that break down in a few years.
Mate, you carry
so they can sell all of them. Well, do you really believe that cars are made to break down?
What, built-in obsolescence? Yeah, I believe in built-in obsolescence, don't you?
Well, I tell you what, when I was a kid,
people make deliberately exploit. Any one of us.
We went on holiday. We could barely guarantee to get
You're much more tactile than the Jeremy geezer. He hated it when I touched his legs.
The cars were so unreliable, they've become much more reliable. And I sort of think the companies that made obsolescent cars went out of business.
You think that, do you?
Well,
I honestly think that.
I posit that as at least a theory of capitalism.
I don't want to. I'm not going to sit here with you. I know you know that capitalism isn't working. working. I know
think it's
you
got a
know
lot of
that a
flaws.
system that requires quantitative easing to hold it together, while energy companies are subsidised by our taxes, while renewable energies are ignored. I know you can't support that system, Evan. I know you're mates with CEOs of big business.
Let me bring up
figures.
the graph.
I don't want to look at a graph, mate.
let's
I
pick
ain't
the
got
graph.
time for a bloody graph.
That's another way of thinking about it. Well, that's the normal world. That's the garden with the snake in it, and that's chaos. That's the chaos that arises when your plans collapse, right? That's the world in the underworld. And so the underworld's always there, and it's lurking beneath everything. It's like the figure of the shark in the Jaws poster, right? There you are, swimming at the top, and there's that terrible thing underneath that can come up and pull you down. That's the world. So you need to be able to operate here, and you need to be able to operate here. And when you operate here, well, that's when you rescue your father from the belly of the whale. That's when you go down, you see, when you're down in chaos and you don't know what the hell's going on, you have to rediscover the values that have oriented people forever. That's what you have to discover. So, for example, when I'm dealing with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've usually encountered someone malevolent, they have to relearn the description of good and evil. Because if they don't, they have no framework. They're lost. They think, well, there's a malevolence afoot in the world, and I'm a naive prey animal for the malevolence of the world. It's like, well, good luck functioning under that set of assumptions, man. You just do not recover from that. You stay at home in your burrow. That's what you do. Well, you have to. You go down into that, you think, okay, well, malevolence is afoot. I better be the sort of person that can understand it and deal with it. And that's another reason why you have to transform yourself into a monster. That's the Jungian incorporation of the shadow. It's no bloody joke. Because the only thing that a monster won't mess with is another monster. And you might say, well, I don't want to transform myself into a monster. It's like, you don't have a choice. You can either be a pathetic monster, or you can be a monster with some power. Those are your options. There's no non-monster alternative. Weak or strong. And I don't mean strong like dominating tyrant strength. That isn't what I mean at all. I mean strength like functioning at a funeral strength. And that's a kind of monstrosity. And when you're down in chaos, that's what you have to rediscover.
Right hand of God in the foreneck. Right hand of God in the foreneck. Start with my story, right? They can hear okay?
Yep, you should be fine.
July 4th, 2018, 2 weeks after buying a Buick Rendezvous. I was teaching part-time and waitressing. I was on my way back to Western Carolina University where I went to college with my children. And the vehicle had exploded. I didn't know the vehicle was on fire. A Mustang had told me to pull over. When I stopped the car and put the car in park from the highway, the front of the car smoke came out the front end. I opened my car door and there were flames higher than me already. And I ran to my daughter's side behind me. I tried to get her out of her seatbelt. When the flames came up from underneath, caught fire on my legs and my arms, I rolled myself out. Ran to my son's side to get him out of his car seat. Caught fire again, rolled myself out. My daughter came walking to me all black, no hair left, no skin. And a woman had came running across the road along with all these men in spectacles to watch this happen. It's the highway had stopped on both sides. And when I went to run to get my son, his body exploded from the vehicle on fire and landed on the ground. My attorneys have now come to find that the EvenFlo car seat we had put in for the day when we were washing his other one was also recalled along with the Buick Rendezvous as 2 explosions come from the rear of the vehicle. We've now investigated at least 6 other rendezvous that have exploded around the same time as mine, 3 in North Carolina in 2018 in July. We fought in state court. Judge Leslie Kim Smith had dismissed our case and we fought oral argument to go to federal court and we had just been dismissed again. And now our attorneys are telling us we are going to lose in Supreme Court. Trying to figure out how we could be treated this way. Doing some research, I found that we're not being treated as American citizens. There's been fraud committed against our name, incorporated, able to do commerce, not protected by law. Trade is protected, commerce is not. There's very little evidence, they say, that can prove our actual living being and our competence in court. And that a state is different than the state of Michigan, my birthright state.
You are the foreigner. You have no ability to state a claim because of your birth certificate status, and you are on the foreign soil. So today we're going to take a look at some of the things that are being done to the American citizens. That if you don't have the right mechanics and methods as you write things down, you lose jurisdiction of what you're trying to say for the ability to state a claim. I'd like to give a little grammar lesson to the world and to Tucker Carlson about facts, otherwise known as nouns. We use hyphens between nouns to command control of the nouns. If you want to step into the big boy field and play around with the big boys, you better know how to syntax, because if you can't control your world, somebody's going to control it for you. They're going to tell you you're on foreign soil, which is an adjective pronoun. They're going to direct you in circles and looping of things that don't exist. You must have ability to control your facts. So you can learn a little bit about this and get yourself the necessary education so that when you do run into this parallel construction, who is rogue on its face and is thwarting the command position of the Postmaster-General, me, Russell-J. Gould, and Commander-in-Chief, when you know these facts to be true, the fiction will leave you alone. But you have to know the foundation or the root cause, which is your birth certificate, and the ability for you to conduct business from your birth certificate is a negative condition of state, and you will get no answers and no solutions. Now, the American journalists can all sit in denial all they want, but it doesn't change the facts that the birth certificate system and the U.S. presidency's authorizations and guidelines to elect a president ended in 1999. I cannot change that, nor do I live in the past. We can only establish the facts in the now space scenario. So as you move forward in your journalistic ways, you now have knowledge of what a fact looks like and what it does not look like. If you want to remain factless, by all means, continue on in your denial. And the American journalists continue to blocking this story about there actually being presidents. Give me a break. That ended in 1999. Point being, if you do not control your parallel construction, you will have words defined for you and you will be spun in loops of no solutions. In closing, on this weekend of July 4th, the Day of the Slaves, learn how to syntax, because if you don't know how to communicate correct, the fiction will eat you up. You can learn more about this at lastflagstanding.com, and you can also get a claim of the life as a solution at fortheclaimofthelife.com. What the claim of the life does, and it gives you a foundation to join the correct flag, which I have the Title IV copyrights to, stemming from a filing at the United Nations in 1999 for copyrights on the Title IV 1 to 1.9 dimension flag. The value in that is, as you go to ports and courts and banks, when you hoist the colors in the correct communication parsing syntax grammar, you now have the capacity to state a claim. If you don't have the correct flag, you don't have the capacity to state a claim in your world, nor do others have a chance to join it. The value of being able to state a claim and to control the definitions of the words that you are going to allow into your life gives you a tactical position to block and defend yourself from negativity and create a dynasty around you, to be a sovereign, to choose your own battles, to choose your own way that you see the facts to be positioned by the prepositional phrase. You preset the facts. Without presetting the facts, you create subjective interpretation, which is what we see on these words right here, such as when you take the hyphen out between domestic terrorist, it becomes an adjective pronoun. Now, domestic to me in this position can mean a cup, or it can mean a table, or a chair. It's only subjective interpretation. And terrorist in this position becomes a pronoun or a no fact, because the prefix pro to a word means no. So as you learn how to syntax and learn the order of operations of prefixes and suffixes, commanding your position with a fact in the now space will give you the necessary control to control your world. Without that, someone else is going to define it for you. Someone else is going to control the outcome of your life. I'm Russell-J. Gould, Postmaster-General, Commander-in-Chief, and now you're with the knowledge.
And when you go into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return, because this ensures that you are dead on the waters. You see, this is a ship in the sea of... Oh, it's in the sea of air, in the sea of water. That is why it is a citizen ship, whereas this is the living document. And when you go into court or anywhere like that, and you bring that into you, that notifies those dead entities that you are living, that you are a man or a woman, not a person. This is a person, this is a man. There is a male. See, they won't say here, a man. They will put here a person. This is a person. You see, the all caps name, Bonacci, that is a person. Please look at your Black's Law Dictionary. Please look at your law dictionaries and find out what person means. Person means corporation. Corporation comes from the word corpse. It's dead. Of course it's dead. It's a bit of paper. It's a dead piece of paper. Whereas I'm living. You can hear my sound. You can hear my voice. You can see that I'm alive and moving. These are dead pieces of paper. This is 2 dimensions. And see, what they've done is they've forced us to commit fraud by creating joinder to this person. You see, so when the judge was speaking to me today, he was talking to Mr. Santo Bonacci. Mr. is a title. It's a title that belongs to a person. And so I am not a person. I am a man, a flesh, blood man. This person can go to jail. This person, they can have this person on your birth certificate, which is a death certificate, but your live born record tells you that you are living. Please acquire your live birth record, folks. Please go to the registry and have this with you at all times, and get out of the jurisdiction of the police and the judges, for they are committing fraud against your name, against your living being status, and they are reducing you to a person. A person is a corporation. You don't want to be a corporation. A corporation is a corpse. It's dead. It does not live, it does not speak. They can't hear your voice in court. It's a commercial process. They can only deal with the dead in their ship of citizenships. And you don't want to be a citizen. You want to be a sovereign under God's jurisdiction, as evidence into the record. I did that, and what this does is it tells you that you are living. You see, here's Santo Bonacci in lower minuscule letters, male, living. See, they've got here living or stillborn. And so this tells one and all that you are living, and take yourself out of their ship, their citizenship, because this is a ship of Admiralty law. And when you go into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return.
That's why today Americans are nothing but slaves. Now this is something I want you to understand, and you need to listen carefully, because this is profoundly important. Most people have never heard this, and don't even understand what I'm trying to say. So try and follow what I'm going to tell you. There are 2 kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. Maritime admiralty is banking law. And the law of the Maritime Admiralty says that you, because you came out of your mother's water, are a Maritime Admiralty product. This is why the ship is sitting in its berth and it's tied to the dock, and the captain has to give a certificate of manifest to the port authorities because money is changing hands. This is why when you were born, you have to have a birth certificate. It's got to be signed by the dock because that's where the ship is tied to, is the dock. So the dock signs your birth certificate. Out of your mother's water, you came down her birth canal, produced another product to be bought and sold. England, the British Crown, through international banking, owns your physical body, and that's the law. So you can think it's funny all you want. So the bottom line is that you are a maritime admiralty product, and therefore the banks own your body. And on the back of the Social Security card will be numbers in red. On the front will be in blue or black, but on the back will be in red. The numbers on the back of a Social Security card in red designate your body. It is the serial number of your stock.
Rome, the City of London, this City of London, the commercial hub where the Phoenicians, the phonies, went with their commerce laws, and DC are the three cities of the Ring of Power. You've got services, privileges, and benefits. And you might want to check Black's Law Dictionary to find out what that means. It means you're a freaking slave. Privileges, yeah, you can go to jail, that's a privilege. You can pay tax, that's a benefit. Benefits them. It's all rigged and stacked in their favour. You can't win in court, there's no remedy. It's a slave ship. How did they get us enslaved? Well, I wonder. Well, when a child is born, it comes through a birth canal, doesn't it? So when the ship comes in the high waters from another land, which has different laws, and cannot trade with another country unless it has maritime law, it comes into the birthing canal, B-E-R-T-H, yeah? Right? Birth, same stuff. Canal, birth, the docks. There's always a doctor when a child is born, isn't there? That's the docks, yeah? A certificate of manifest. Oh, here's a baby. A statement of live birth. And they got your parents to inform. It says it on your birth certificate, the informant. Your physical bodies and your souls and your spirits. The Catholics, the universal church, tell you that salus extra ecclesia non est. In other words, you can't be saved outside of the Catholic Church. So they take it upon themselves to baptise you. And there's your baptism. You're a citizen of Rome, and you're owned lock, stock, and barrel, and you're a slave of Rome. Citizen means slave. Or employee. You work for Rome. And you love that. Oh, I'm going into court and I'm going to defend my name there, see? Santo Bonacci. Wow, all caps. I wonder what that means. Fiction. Corporation. Everything's on paper. You get scared and you go, oh, they're demanding I go to court. They're just inviting you to go to court. You can decline as you will, as you wish. But people are going into court not knowing anything about this, and they're being raped by this empire. Yeah, Babylon. That's why the whole thing's called Babylon the Great. Get out of her, my people, if you do not want to share with her in her sins, because you will. And we're going to talk about the remedy to get out of Babylon the Great. It's a system of shit served up as freedom for you. Just get a birth certificate and join the corporation and get on the citizenship. Well, yeah. Yeah, you're citizen, all right, on their ship. It's a ship.
interesting as to the origin of these words. Attorney. The word attorney, attornment, from the 16th century, combined with the Latin word at, to, and torno, turn, round off, means to consent implicitly or explicitly to a transfer of right. In other words, the attorney is there to prove that you have given up your rights. So I'm definitely not here to get you to give up your rights. I'm not an attorney. What about a barrister? The word barrister is from the late 16th century, combined with the Latin word barrow, which means dunce, incompetent, sto or stare, to stand firm, to be in position. So barrister means literally to stand, represent a dunce or an incompetent. Well, I'm not here to stand before you and accuse any of you of being dunce or incompetent, so I'm certainly not a barrister. Am I a lawyer? Well, the word lawyer is from the 16th century, combining the Latin word la or lares, customary law, and lurare, to swear, take an oath, to conspire, to customary law of the private guild. In other words, sworn an oath to lie. That's a lawyer. A lawyer is one who has sworn an oath to lie, a pathological liar. That's their sworn oath. Well, I'm not here to be a pathological liar. I'm certainly not a lawyer. And just in case there's any misunderstanding, the art of law. Am I practicing law? In the 13th century in Florence, the Medici organised merchants into private systems of 5 major guilds called the Arti Medianae and 7 minor guilds called the Arti Minor, occult guilds called the Arti, hence the art of law. Well, I'm not here to practice occult before you, and I certainly don't belong to an occult guild. So I'm certainly not practicing the art or claiming to practice the art. And last one, if you have a legal problem, find a competent advocate, definitely not an attorney, lawyer, or barrister, okay? Competence is a fictional concept of being fit, proper, qualified to produce and argue reason through knowledge and skill of law, logic and rhetoric against arguments. So competence is about knowing information and knowing how to use it. Those 2 key things, knowing something and knowing how to use it. We say, and these are references to canon, that's actually canon 2600 of the canon law of Eucadia. By the way, these are handouts that you'll get at the end, so you don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to write this, you'll get them in handouts as slides. Your divine person or soul is always competent. We always say this. If your soul, your essence, and people have different words for it, so I'm not going to label it as one particular label, but if that thing which is divine of you is from the greater divine, how could it be incompetent? How could it be? It can't be. So we always say that your soul, your spirit, that essence of you, that immortal part of you can't be incompetent.
Then there was the Phoenicians over here. And check out the work of David Icke, because he's spot on the money. You know how he's gone around and he's discovered the Phoenician connection. You know that flag, the flag that the British use? What's that one called? Yeah, well, anyway, they've got the Union Jack, but they've got this flag too, yeah? Right? The Knights Templar flag and everything like that. That comes from Phoenicia, these guys, right here. These guys here were very into commerce. You see, when you go to court today, you're doing commerce. It's all about commerce. These guys, the Phoenicians, the word phony, you know, when someone's a phony, that comes from Phoenicia, because they are phonies. And you get phonetics, language, because these were the alphabet people, right? They gave the alphabet, the current form of alphabet, went to Greece and then Rome, but comes from Phoenicia, Tyre, and how money families merged with monarchy, blue blood families, and now you have the bourgeoisie, not the aristocracy, running the planet. In other words, the unconscious. Once upon a time, it was a meritocracy in a republic. And if you had the merits, you got the job. These days, George Bush gives himself the job. A known criminal family like you wouldn't believe, killers, murderers. Prescott Bush was doing trade with the Japanese during World War II, selling them scrap metal and oil. He got busted. They took him to court. Didn't lose. You don't when you know the judges, man, you know. No worries, Mr. Judgy Poos. They're all criminals. But these families, they elect themselves the elite, the elites. They're not the aristocracy. They are the bourgeoisie scum. And in the Bible, they're called the Gentiles. And the Gentile times of the nations have been a good few thousand years. And why? Well, because we live in cycles. And this is what the churches don't want you to know. Obelisk in the middle of St. Peter's Square, stolen off Cairo by Julius Caesar, because the Julian dynasty is the family that started these corporations. Because he and his son, adopted son, Augustus, were the first gods, sons of God, to rule an empire. And the republic went bye-byes. Just like the Vatican did 130 years ago in America, in 1881, on the 21st of February. The 1881 Act. It's an act. They're acting. The US is a corporation, not the United States of America, the Republic.
A vessel. So is your body. It's a vessel that produces a product.
Right.
So when the ship pulls into harbor, it stops, and where it parks is called its berth. It's berthing a ship, or she sits in her berth. And every item on that ship, coming off that ship, is money. It's money changing hands.
Right.
And came in on water. So it's called. So every piece has to have what is called a certificate of manifest, because she is sitting in her berth. That's why when you were born,
I had a birth certificate.
Your mother's water broke. You were inside a container of water. Her water broke and you came out, and therefore you have to have a birth certificate.
Wow.
There, and it's got to be signed by the dock, because that's where the ship is sitting. The dock is where the ship sits.
It's funny.
So once you begin to see how the words and terms are all based on maritime admiralty, the law of water, the cash flow, the liquid asset.
But it's just in English, the dock, the water.
Yeah, of course. But of course, it goes all the way back to the English or British domination of the seas.
Oh.
And so when the British began to dominate the seas, the Knights Templar Masonic Order of the Knights Templars, who have been in the middle of Asia, came back into Western, Eastern Europe, brought all of these concepts, and it was developed into a commercial system. Your body as a corporation. No, that's a whole story. We could talk for hours on this, but your body as a corporation.
Of cells, you mean?
No. It's called, by law, your body, your physical body is a corporation. And so when you die, you're a corpse. Because when you're living, you're a corporation. You are a business. And hanging out with that person is bad business.
Right.
Or who I hang out with is none of your business.
Right.
Because your body is a business.
Wow.
And so you say, well, what you're doing with her or him is bad business.
Right.
But of course, if you're getting married and she's very wealthy, you say she's of good stock. Right? Words and terms are based on maritime admiralty, the law of water. And so that's why when you go into a court, you have a fence and a gate. The people sit out here and the judge sits inside. The gate is called a floodgate. When you go through the canal, you have a floodgate.
Right.
So when you're sitting out here, you're in the law of the land. The judge has no control or no jurisdiction over the people sitting out here. No jurisdiction whatsoever.
Right, because they're outside the gate.
That's outside the gate.
Right.
That's on land.
Right.
But when you walk past that gate, now you're in hot water. And someone's gonna have to bail you out.
Bail, yeah.
Okay?
Bail.
All the words and terms that are used in law and courts and commerce.
Yeah.
For you to understand how pervasive this concept of water is on the earth.
Wow.
The law of water, maritime admiralty, It's an extraordinary story about how governments rule the world. And unless you understand this, you're never going to figure out what's going on. Look at it. When you walk into a courtroom and they call your name, you get up and you put your hand on the gate and you open the gate. The moment you put your hand on the gate, by international law, you of your own volition have opened yourself up to maritime admiralty law, because you were on the law of the land. As long as you don't touch that gate and go through it, you haven't opened the floodgate. Now, once you open the floodgate, there's a piece of wood on top of that gate, and it's called the bar, and you're not licensed to pass the bar. So what you've done is you've opened the floodgate, but you weren't licensed to pass the bar.
So what does that mean?
So that means that you are dead. You are now dead. Once you touch that, you are dead.
Because you're no longer in control of
That's right. You are dead. Well, you're considered to be a dead man. That's why the attorney has to speak for you. He has to represent you.
Why are you dead? Because
you went into the deep water and you died. You drowned.
Because you weren't licensed. Because you weren't.
Right. You were not licensed to pass the bar.